Hello and welcome to the Ruth MacFit Podcast. Very, very happy to be here with you today. Now, it is a bit of a bittersweet day. It's the last podcast I'm going to be recording for you here in Barbados. I'm always sad to leave. We fly out this evening. We land back in the UK tomorrow morning. And I'm always going to miss that blue sea and my lovely friends that I have here. But equally, I'm also excited to see my animals and to get back into a bit of a routine, sleeping on my own bed and having my own office so that I can really get stuck in with some of the work that I have planned going forward. So I don't know if you feel like that after a holiday. It really does start to feel quite bittersweet, doesn't it? You're craving a bit of routine, but you're sad to leave behind what is going on around you in wherever it is you've been. Anyway, you may have heard me say it before, but fat loss is easier when we feel calmer. And I think that's because most of us can stick to healthy habits when life is calm. The real test really comes when life is busy, it's messy. And if you listen to my previous podcast episode, you will know that I had one of those days recently. My allergies were playing up, I'd slept badly, and I'd woken up feeling really tired, hungry, and grumpy. I think we can probably all relate to that kind of day where you're short with those around you. I don't even want them to hear me saying that. And even the thought of doing something for yourself feels like you're climbing a mountain. For you, it might not be allergies. It could be when your child is sick or your boss has dropped a load of extra work on your desk, or just that life is really busy in general. Now, I'm not going to be chatting about sleep in this episode. If you haven't listened to my last episode, I talk about how sleep can affect hunger, cravings, and do a real deep dive into it. So go back and catch up on that if you did miss it. The bigger problem that I want to talk about with these sorts of days are when we're already feeling overwhelmed and the rigid plans that we set for ourselves backfire. Now, psychologists call it goal abandonment. If you can't do it perfectly, you're much more likely to throw the whole thing out the window. I think we just call this all or nothing thinking. But really, this is why a lot of us fall into this trap. The truth to this is that it's not about those perfect days, that it's going to shape our results. It's how we handle those busy, messy ones. And that is where your non-negotiables come in. It's very easy to think that progress comes from those days where we can tick every box. It feels so good, doesn't it? You've got the time, the energy, you have a plan, and yes, it feels great. But they aren't going to be the ones that are going to decide the results that we get in the future. We can think of progress a bit like a chain. It's only as strong as our weakest link. And those weakest links are always our messy days, the days where everything feels so much harder. So that's what we're going to be chatting about in today's episode. Not how to go out and smash your goals when life is going along smoothly, but how to keep going when it's anything but. Because it's these days that are going to help us build results. Because results aren't really built on those best days. They're protected by the hardest ones. And I want to bring this to life a little bit with one of my lovely clients, Hayley. She's built so many incredible habits since starting with me about a year ago now. And we were chatting in the No Crap Summer forum, where I asked about any 60-second tweaks that people might have. And I'm just going to read her words. I think that's easier here. She said, I think I've got loads, and I spend over 20 minutes doing all of my 60-second tweaks, but definitely getting my workout or walking stuff out, which feels especially important when it gets into winter, and I'd have to turn on the light and wake my husband to find them otherwise. I also go into my day calmer if I spent a minute roughly planning my meals for the next day, not prepping the food even, but knowing if I need to stop at the supermarket to buy lunch on my way into the office, take something out the freezer in the morning, etc. Helps avoid faffing in the morning. And also, something you should know about Hayley is she has made incredible progress. She's lost a great deal of weight, but she's done it in a way that has fitted with her life. And the reason I love that comment is because it shows us the power of small. None of these things on their own look particularly impressive, but when we stack them together in that compounding way, over time, it changes everything. But on the other hand, I've also worked with many women who are stuck in that I'll start again on Monday cycle. I've been there. I used to eat extra on a Sunday evening because I was going to start again on Monday. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that on a Monday. So I had to get it all out the way on a Sunday night, right? But really, it's when things go wrong midweek. And instead of adjusting and adapting, we throw the whole week out. It feels like we're having a reset, but really it's just repeating that same loop again and again. If we want to have a breakthrough, it's going to come when we stop erasing those hard days and instead ask ourselves how we can keep moving through them. And the reason that this matters so much is very simple. Research shows it's not about how hard we push and intensity, but consistency that predicts our long-term success. Even tiny actions keep that habit loop alive. And every time you show up for yourself on those hard days, you're reinforcing the identity of the person who keeps going. You believe in yourself just a little bit more. So when you create habits that bend with life instead of break them, you start to move away from the yo-yo progress and you build momentum that is going to last long term. So that's what we're going to be unpacking in today's episode. What non-negotiables are, why they matter, why people struggle with them, and how you can create your own. Because I know that I talk about creating non-negotiables for your busiest days, but I don't think I've gone into detail about how you might do that. So by the end of this episode, I really want you to know exactly how to set habits that keep you consistent even on your hardest days. So let's have a little chat about what non-negotiables really are. We can think of them as our safety net, those minimum standards that we're setting ourselves. It's not about aiming for something that's impressive or a high number. It's about keeping you moving forward when everything in you wants to give up. So for me, one of my non-negotiables is 8,000 steps. My average is actually normally closer to 15,000. But if I can even hit 8,000 on a hard day, I know that I've kept that habit alive. I'm not just doing nothing. Another one for me is prepping my tea for the morning as part of my evening routine, which seems a bit weird. On its own, it definitely doesn't seem like much, but it really helps me transition from daytime into night, and it keeps that little routine alive. Now, where I see people go wrong is when they set that bar too high. They'll say, my non-negotiable is 10,000 steps because technically I don't have an excuse. They might not be achieving that at the moment, but they know that they have the time to do it. And then life happens, the school run, deadlines, exhaustion, poor sleep, allergies, and suddenly 10,000 feels pretty impossible. So they do nothing. And the other trap that people fall into is dismissing those small wins. I hear this often with things like the pajama workouts. The pajama workouts are very short workouts that you could do in your PJs. You can do it when life is busy and time is tight. And often women will think that because it's so short, it doesn't count. But it does count, because the point is that it isn't that the habit needs to look impressive. It's that you're keeping on going. And that means that you're keeping that chain that we spoke about at the beginning alive. On the flip side, though, I do see people fall into striving only for the minimums and forgetting about their optimal days. And yes, if you did 5 PJ workouts a week, you'd absolutely be making incredible progress. And I see so many women who do these short workouts as their main aim, and they do get stronger. They do start to feel better. And for them, it works really well, because if we think about the compounding effect, doing a PJ workout 5, 6, 7 times a week is going to be like doing 2 or 3 full workouts if we're thinking about compounding effect. But sometimes our minimums are just holding us steady. And when life gives us space again, the idea is that you want to push more. A researcher called BJ Fogg talked about this in his Tiny Habits work, which shows that small, simple actions are the most reliable entry point for lasting change. If it feels almost too easy, you're in the sweet spot, because it's not about what you're striving for. It's about staying in the game until you can stretch again. That is key. Now, if you are someone who has struggled to set or stick with non-negotiables, you're definitely not alone. And I think we've all been there. I did it fairly recently, and I feel like I should know better. I decided to commit to meditating. I knew I felt great after a 20-minute session, and 5 minutes never really felt enough. So I made a non-negotiable, a perfect 20-minute session in my office, which isn't even in the house, with an exact recording that I liked, which sounds great in theory, 20 minutes, fine. But really it's 30 minutes when I think about the fact that I need to go and set up to go to my office. And on the busy days, I just didn't do it. I'd set the bar so high that it stopped me building that habit. And if I'd even committed to 5 minutes a day, that would have compounded into something pretty powerful over time. And then once it started to feel automatic, then I could have stretched it. And that's what non-negotiables are meant to do. Keep the habit alive in the simplest of form until you're ready to do more. And it isn't just meditation, is it? Think about walking. You might tell yourself 30 minutes is the minimum. But if you're wiped out, that becomes impossible. 10 minutes would still build the habit, keep the chain alive, and compound it into something that is more meaningful long term. So the main traps that I see are going to be perfectionism, when you think you should be able to do the full version and anything less is not going to be good enough. And because you haven't thought about what a lesser version looks like, it's hard to think of those in those busy moments as well. Overcommitment, trying to set too many non-negotiables at once, and dismissing small wins, telling yourself the little things don't count. So if any of those sound familiar, I want you to know it's not that you're being lazy. You are human, but there is a way to change this. So let's have a little think about how we're going to create those non-negotiables. The first thing that I want you to do is really think about those messy days. What do they look like for you? For some of you, it's going to be a day where you've hardly had any sleep, or the school run's chaotic, or work is piling up, you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, a bit stressed, and you're already feeling worn out before it's even breakfast time. And for others, it's those days where technically you have the time, but mentally you're just done. And I think we often forget that. We think about the issues being external factors, but how we feel, our time and energy really counts as well. These are the days that we're going to be designing our non-negotiables for. So write them down if you can, because when you know what your hardest days look like, you can then start to build habits that are going to fit with those. Once you've got that picture, you can then pick 3 habits, one for movement, one for nutrition, and then one for mindset or routine. We're going to keep it simple here. For example, it might be a 10-minute walk, making sure you've got some protein at lunchtime, or laying out your gym kit or clothes for tomorrow. Now, here's where a lot of people start to actually trip up. They pick something that is already a stretch. And then when life does start to get busy and messy, it feels too much. So I want to set a golden rule here. Shrink it right down until it almost feels too easy. And then if you're saying, that doesn't even count, you're probably in about the right spot. So I want to give you an example here. You might tell yourself, I should be able to manage a 30-minute walk even on my worst days. I've got the time. But if we're completely honest, will you? Probably not. But if we then say 5 or 10 minutes, suddenly it's doable. And the most beautiful part to this is half the time you'll end up doing more anyway. But even if you don't, you have still kept that habit alive. And I want you to remember that just because you should be able to do something doesn't mean that you actually will. And that doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. So instead of setting yourself up for failure, let's set those non-negotiables around the most tired, stressed out version of you and what she can manage. Now, there's also decision fatigue, which I do love to chat about. On those hardest days, your brain doesn't want to decide. And that's why it helps to practice those habits on your good days too, so that they can become automatic. Write them down, put them somewhere, pop them on the fridge so you can see them, and then create if-then statements. If my day goes off track, then I will do this instead. Think of those non-negotiables as your blueprint. And the next question we really need to think about is how you actually slow yourself down in the heat of the moment when you're feeling overwhelmed, so that you don't abandon the plan. Because even with a plan, life will still throw you off track. You'll have days where stress is going to hit, your head is racing, and the last thing that you want to do is think about your habits. And there's a reason for this. Psychologists call it cognitive load. The more pressure you're under, the harder it is to make good choices. It's not that you don't know what to do, it's that your brain has no bandwidth left to make the choice. So what we need here are tools that help you pause, just even for a few seconds, so you can step out of reaction mode and actually choose. I've got a couple of strategies I love, and one that I've been hearing more recently. So firstly, let's talk about the physiological sigh. This is where you do 2 quick inhales through your nose without taking a breath in between, and 1 long exhale through your mouth. I'm going to try and show it to you now, and you can try yourself as well. But basically it helps calm your nervous system very quickly. Now, the reason I've heard this is because we do this naturally. It's why it's called the physiological sigh. You might notice that when people are crying, they'll often go, and they're taking that 2 breaths in. So little note to remember there about why this can work. You could also have a mantra, something simple like pause, then choose, or non-negotiables first. Write it down, put it on your fridge, say it out loud when you feel like things are starting to spiral. I think Mel Robbins does the counting back from 5 that can be helpful as well. Just something simple, just counting in your head back from 5 to 1. The pause is going to be everything, because once we've slowed ourselves down, we can start to say, okay, what is my minimum? What are my non-negotiables? And then we can act on those, right? Now, maybe that still feels a bit too abstract for you. So before we go into real examples, I want to pause on one really important point. Not every day is going to be created equal. We can think of green flag days, which are the ones where you've got energy, space, maybe even loads of motivation. And that's when you're going to stretch for those optimal habits. Red flag days are when we're feeling stretched thin, things are feeling a bit more overwhelming. And that's when you're going to fall back on those minimums. And for you, that might be that on a green day, you get outside for a longer walk or cook a proper high protein dinner. And on a red day, it might be 5 minutes of stretching before bed or grabbing a yogurt pot on your way out the door. Both count. And the reason they count is because they both keep the chain alive. One thing that worked brilliantly in our No Crap Summer Challenge was using mantras to remind yourself of this. People would say things like, I always feel better after I move, or I never regret eating a healthy meal. And one that I've used in the past. Then there's reminders like something is always better than nothing, do something to make future me proud. They're such simple phrases, but they anchor you back to your identity when your brain is trying to talk you out of things. And yours doesn't have to be one of those. You can create your own. And a really useful way of doing this is to start with, I'm someone who, or I always feel, and then you can finish it in a way that keeps you steady on those hardest of days. So let's bring this to life, because it's one thing to talk about those non-negotiables in theory, but I think it really clicks when you can see it in practice. So I'm going to use my own day as an example, but remember that yours might look different. My habits are pretty established now. I've been doing this for a long time, so my non-negotiables might be a little bit more than where you'd be starting, and that's fine. Or they might not be, which is also fine. But the point is the principle stays the same. So on a messy day, a red flag day, maybe I slept badly, and instead of a full hour in the gym, I might change that to 30 minutes at home with lighter weights. I'll still hit my 8,000 step minimum, even if I don't get anywhere near the 12,500 that I'd like, really. And for food, I might just grab a quick protein shake and a banana and make sure that lunch has some protein in it. And in the evening, if I'm feeling exhausted, I'll still get my tea ready for the morning. It doesn't look that impressive, but it definitely keeps my habits alive. And then if we compare that to a day where I'm feeling great, a green day, on those days, I'm going to do that full hour in the gym. I'm going to push my steps closer to 12,500, maybe more, and plan in a proper high protein breakfast and lunch. And in the evening, I'll stretch a little further, maybe prepping some meals for the next day or spending longer doing my journaling. That's my version. And for you, it might look very different. Maybe your non-negotiable is 4,000 steps and not 8,000. Maybe your quick breakfast is a yogurt pot and not a shake. This is all fine. The details don't matter. It's the principle that does. On your red days, you flex to the minimums, and on the green days, you stretch for your optimals. Both count as wins. So what I want you to take away from this episode is your results aren't built on your best days. They're protected by the hardest ones. So I want you to choose 3 non-negotiables, 1 for movement, 1 for nutrition, 1 for mindset or routine. Make them so simple that even the version of you who's exhausted, stressed, and tempted to give up can still do them. I'm going to put a checklist in the show notes to guide you to spot your hardest days. You can then pick one in each area, shrink it down until it feels easy, write down your if-then reminder, and remember, just because you should be able to do more on your hardest days doesn't mean that you will. That isn't failure. That's just life. It's reality. The win is keeping the chain alive so that you're ready to stretch again when life gives you the green flag, when it waves it your way. So definitely don't wait until the perfect time. Choose your non-negotiables today and let them carry you through the messy days. And if every day is feeling messy at the moment, remember, that is okay too. You just keep doing those until you're ready to push again. That is how you build the consistency, and consistency is what is going to create those real, long-lasting results. Now, if this episode resonated with you, then please do subscribe, leave a comment, come and find me on Instagram at Ruth MacFit, because I love chatting about things on there. Take a screen grab, share it on Instagram, let me know you've listened, and I will be back again with another episode next week. And that will be in the UK as well. Anyway, until next time, goodbye.